virtual public would like to make comments during a public hearing, please use the raise hand function on Zoom, and you'll be assigned a speaking time. And if you're listening in via dial-in, press *9 to raise your hand, and then press *6 to unmute yourself. This meeting is being recorded by the local scene, and we thank them very much for their courtesy, and a record of this meeting will be posted on the local scene website as soon as they're able. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify me at this time. Okay. I'm going to begin by signing documents, of course. Would you brief us on what needs to be signed, Matt?
Sure.
Are you ready? We could start somewhere else.
Nope.
Okay.
Good. We have an invoice from Environmental Partners. Sorry, turn my mic back on. We have an invoice from Environmental Partners for MS4 support for the month of February. We have a reimbursement to myself for a purchase of rain gear and mileage reimbursement for myself and Juliana, and a reimbursement to yourself for a vernal pool workshop registration.
Okay.
And it's going to look a little different when I pass this down now. They're changing the way that we do all of our bill processing, so we're just having you just basically sign this front page here and flip through if you want to see any details on things.
Okay.
Real confusing.
It's okay with me. All right, we ready to move on to an action item as long as you can just pass that down? I'm going to open the meeting to discuss the extension request for 20 Marion Drive. That's one reason. Do you have any comments, Matt?
They will be continuing to our next meeting. They did not have a chance to provide materials in time for our office to review.
Okay. Do I have a motion to continue this? We'll probably continue it to April 24th?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay. And we're going to vote on that. Dot?
Yes.
Jim, are you on?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Kalina's a yes. Buzz?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Also, the conservation agent, Matt Pinello, would like to discuss the commission codification of the Kingston bylaw changes from the clerk's office. You want to make your comments on that, Matt?
Yes. Thanks. This came down from the town clerk, Paul Gallagher. They were doing their codification of the town's general bylaw, and they had some analysis done of legal whatnot, and came up with changes for a lot of the different chapters. And this was in the OneDrive for your review, that there was a change to the wetlands protection section, and I believe the only change was when it discusses filing a notice of intent. It says shall be sent by certified mail to the Conservation Commission, and the change includes delivered by hand or. So that just adds an option for hand delivering an application instead of needing to send it certified mail. So if the commission is fine with that change, then I would suggest just a motion and a vote, and then there's something here where Kalina would sign as the representative of the commission.
Do you have any comments from commissioners?
One second, so that was the only change?
That was the only change relating to wetlands protection. There are a lot of changes. There's a change for stretch energy code, camping facilities, disorderly conduct, earth
No, I mean
removal.
just to deal with the Conservation Commission.
That's the, yeah, I mean, there may be other things that the commission might have some sort of an interest in, but that's the only wetlands-related change.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the amendment.
All right, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Dot?
Yes.
And Jim?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Kalina's a yes. Buzz?
Yes?
Marilyn? Yes. Brian?
Yes.
And so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right. We ready to move on to enforcement?
Sure.
How about we talk about 105 Monks Hill Road?
Sure. Dave Blumenfeld is here. You remember him from last meeting, maybe, or the meeting before, talking about Monks Hill Road. When he first reached out to me about Monks Hill Road, I just kind of looked his name up in our town GIS and saw the address, and then I reached out to him and said, hey, I actually had that address on my list of things to do. Just at some point in reviewing aerial imagery, it was apparent there were changes that appeared to be unpermitted right at Smelt Pond. So now we've gone through and done a little bit more analysis. Some of it was permitted, some of it appears not to have been. So I just asked Dave to come back and have a discussion with the commission. He very recently bought the property, so we're not talking about anything that he did there. It's just unpermitted issues that he inherited. Basically, there's a dock. I believe he said it's a removable dock. Those do still need permitting. They don't necessarily need an NOI filing, but there's a dock and there's what appears to be a shed very close to the pond. So basically, I just said, come talk to the commission. The most likely outcome is that there will be some sort of a deadline set where you either have to have filed a permit for the things or removed the things. So that's where we're at.
Thank you very much. Would you just state your name and your address for the record?
Yes, yeah, Dave Blumenfeld, 105 Monks Hill Road, Kingston.
Thank you. All right. Does the commission have any questions for Mr. Blumenfeld? Do you have any more additional questions for him?
What's the plan to get this resolved?
Pretty simple. I would just say we should probably do just a site visit for staff, just to take a look, and then come up with whatever the commission thinks is a good time frame for that type of thing. So we could do a site visit and then check back at a future meeting, or a site visit and you just say, if nothing has changed based on the site visit, then just set a deadline of blank for coming back with either a plan or evidence that that stuff's been removed.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just back up 1 second. So I'm looking at the little hand sketch. It says approximate location of potential vernal pool.
Yeah.
And then it shows existing fireplace to be rebuilt, grass area, existing sand area to be replaced.
Not everything that's in the OneDrive is necessarily relevant. Apologies for that. There's a lot going on with that property. There's a lot of historical stuff there.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just kind of focusing on the two kind of obvious things that were closest to the pond.
And what were they again? I'm sorry.
Dock and shed. There's a sand area right up against the pond.
Yeah.
The sand area turns out to actually somehow be permitted, but the dock was not permitted that I could tell, and the shed down there is not permitted that I can tell.
And if the dock is removable, does it still require a permit?
Removable docks still require a permit. They do not require an NOI filing.
Okay.
The shed, I don't believe would likely be permitted in that location. So, again, I haven't been on the property, so I haven't seen everything, but based on aerials, it looks to me like that would be a situation where if you received a permit for a shed in that location, you would probably want to see it pushed outside of the 50 foot.
How much?
Typically 50.
Oh, okay.
You know, the 50 foot no structure at a minimum, I think, is in most cases what you see. So the dock is more like, if you want a dock, you permit the dock. If you don't care, then you just remove it. The shed, to me, seems, again, not having been on the property, that if you want to permit that, then you probably need to permit it and move to a different location.
If I
To
may,
a different what? I'm sorry,
Yes.
to a different what?
Location.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, why don't you have your word, Mr. Blumenfeld?
yes, I appreciate that. So the shed that is down by the pond, I can neither confirm nor deny if it was permitted. There were 2 permits filed for storage sheds on the property, one of which was filed in 2004. The other was filed as a legacy permit for another shed. So I think to Matt's point, like a site visit would be helpful. What I do know is that the shed that is down by the water is possibly in the footprint of what was an abandoned cottage that was down by the water. I have no idea if that was, contextually relevant to when they built it, if there was a filing, or if that's, relevant or germane to the conversation around having to have it moved, but I can share those site plans and some of the materials that I have related to that shed, or at least the site plans that point out the cottage. With respect to the dock, it is in fact a modular removable aluminum dock. I did reach out to the manufacturer and was able to find a servicer in the area that was aware of it. It's been there since 2007, but as Matt said, I don't believe it is permitted. So I have reached out to the state and started the pre-application for Chapter 91. I've got some materials here that I can share with the commission related to the plans. Not a full NOI, as Matt said, but at least it's following the WW24 process for that. So yeah, at least with respect to the storage shed, we can arrange a site visit and
Sure.
hopefully address that one.
Yeah, and you can just email me anything that you have for materials, and just email me about when you want to set up a site visit.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Does sound
All
good.
right, thank you.
Thank you so much
How
for
does the
coming
commission
in.
want to deal with anything else? You want me to just go look at it
Yeah,
and?
I think just
Wait on
get
it.
get a view and then report back.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Have a good night.
So, do you have any plans for the road?
For the road.
Isn't it the one with the potholes that make the difficult
No,
driving?
that's a town.
Whole
road.
other issue. But I
Okay.
did pass on that information that Buzz brought up to Paul Basler. He said that, he was familiar, he would see what they could do about coming up with some money.
Okay,
He didn't think it would necessarily fix all of the problems because the swales would cause so much on the hill that it might, but he's aware of it and we've at least passed it along, so we're trying.
Yeah, and then globally, the only thing I would say is that, that road's been that way a long time. It was that way when he bought the house,
Yeah,
so I'll leave it at that.
right.
All right. Let's move on to 28 Raybeth Road. Where are we with that, Matt?
Yeah, that, I don't think I've brought anything before the commission on that, but there was some materials in the OneDrive. When we were doing a erosion control site visit at 46 Rabbith Road on the way out, I noticed a lot of what looked like it basically looked like somebody had just tried to install a new lawn and had a lot of erosion. And I realized that what I was looking at was very, very close to Smelt Brook. Smelt Brook comes out right next to 28 Rabbith Road. So what I thought it was just a property management issue needing erosion control. And then when I started to review aerial imagery, it was apparent that this was an expansion of lawn that was not permitted and was very, very close to Smelt Brook. So we sent out a notice of violation. The landowner, I believe, lives in Florida. And we just, I think on Friday, got a response from Steinbeck and Taylor. They had been hired by the property owner to deal with the issue. He said they'd already been on the property. They were setting up Meadowbrook to show up and do erosion control. They were doing survey work, and he had an arborist working on a planting plan. He asked if we could continue the conversation to the 24th, and I said absolutely, that we're just happy to get some stabilization there. So we will be dealing with that on April 24th.
This is Rabbit Road, you just said this is the house with the dormers in it,
Yes.
and your finger pointing like this? That's your finger in the picture?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't following. Yeah. Yes, the finger is pointing to Smelt Brook. So,
Okay.
quite close.
Yeah.
And all of that on the bottom of the hill is the sediment that has already washed down the hill, so,
So that's all fines and stuff that washed off the hill?
yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we'll continue the discussion on the 24th, thanks. On 56 Main Street, come on down.
What's that?
Just identify yourself for the record.
It's 6:45. We should be moving to hearings, unfortunately, for
Oh,
56 Main Street.
No problem.
I'm sorry, guys.
No problem. Thanks.
You train like a dog at 7 o'clock. Start to drool.
I know. Yeah, I actually told somebody today 7 o'clock and then immediately emailed them back 6:45.
All right. It's about 6:49, and I'm going to open a hearing for the proposed construction of an addition to the existing home, a deck and associated grading within the buffer zone to land subject to coastal storm flowage. You want to just, is there a representative for the Jones River Drive?
Yeah, we have Jed Hannon of Atlantic Coast Engineering is on Zoom, and Brad Holmes was the wetland scientist on this one.
You want to make your comments? You want to hear from them first?
We may as well get a presentation from Jed first.
Well, why don't we have the representative, please introduce yourself for the record, and welcome to the Conservation Commission. Jed, are you there?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jed Hanna with Atlantic Coast Engineering. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, thank you for the introduction. Do I want to share my screen to show the proposed site plan, or do you already have it there?
Yeah, you should share your screen.
Okay, great, we'll do. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So this is 9 Jones River Drive, notice of intent, as you made in the introduction. This is for a proposed addition to a single-family dwelling, 1,172 square feet. Proposed deck in the rear. Brad Holmes did the wetlands flagging on December 12th, 2023. The rear of the property is FEMA 1811. There's no proposed work in that area. The proposed addition is in the Zone X. I'll just put out in the bottom left corner of the drawing that shows the zoning requirements along with the impervious table. So if you look at the bottom left, based on the proposed addition areas, the overall net increase in impervious is 1,486 square feet. We're proposing to mitigate that in accordance with DEP best management practices by capturing the roof runoff, and that is 2,132 square feet, so quite a bit more than what we're increasing for impervious. We're planning to recharge into the groundwater table. There's a detail provided with crushed stone in order to recharge that into the groundwater table. At this point, I would like to pass this to Brad Holmes so he can explain. He put together obviously the environmental memorandum, and then he explained basically the performance standards and how we're complying with those, at least to the best of our ability. So Brad, if you could kind of weigh in on that, please. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission. Brad Holmes with ECR. As Jed noted, we have several resource areas on site. We have a bordering vegetated wetland at the rear of the site. Jed, would you mind just sliding your plan down a little bit? See, we have a FEMA flood zone, and with both of those resource areas, we have buffer zones associated with them. So the buffer zone to the BBW, Jed has shown the town of Kingston 30, 40, and 50-foot buffer zones off the BBW. Off the FEMA flood zone, you have the 100-foot buffer zone, which you can see comes into the back of the structure. The work is outside the buffer zone to the BBW mainly, but there is a portion of the work that's in the 100-foot buffer zone to lands to coastal storm flowage, which is that western portion of the addition and deck. What we did was we put together a submittal to include with the notice of intent going through the town of Kingston standards for work in the buffer zone for land subject to coastal storm flowage. So that's a part of your packet. And all the work that's there generally occurs within existing maintained areas of existing use, driveway, patio, kind of landscaped areas. With that, I'll turn it back to you and Jed, unless you want to get into each performance standards of buffer zone to land subject to coastal storm flowage, and I can go further, but with that, I'll leave it at that.
Any questions? Go on.
Want me to go? So I have some procedural things that need to be corrected for the administrative record that I can work out directly with Jed between the NOI filing and the plan. But in terms of actual substance, everything that they're showing on the plan obviously meets all of the basic setbacks. The 30, 40, and 50 there are incorrect in that they should be off of the land subject to coastal storm flowage boundary and not BVW, based on the fact that they're more landward than the BV. The LSCSF is more landward than the BVW, but that's still not for this purpose, so you can still see it's far enough away to not be within the 50-foot. So there's no issue there. I think that this is something that meets, the standards. The dry wells are good, keep runoff to a minimum. Before I went onto the site, just kind of noticed that there was what appeared to be an unpermitted shed at the periphery of jurisdiction, installed between 2013 and 2015. Appears the current owner purchased in 2019. Aerial imagery indicated possible gradual expansion of yard space within jurisdiction. It looked like there was a large tree removed between October 2021 and July 2023, just based on imagery. Again, not anything that appears to be permitted. When I did the site visit, I'll just share the screen so I can kind of talk through these things. There was definitely...
He's got to stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, Jed, let me see if I can just... Yeah, okay.
He went off.
So, there's the house from the street. Come on. So this is down closer to the salt marsh, looking back up towards the house, and you can see on the left there's the pre-existing lawn. On the right, it's all dirt, leaves. I was told that sort of carport-looking structure was on wheels and wasn't, a permanent structure. You could see it had been closer to the house and had been moved out to this area. As to whether that constitutes a structure is up to the commission's decision, but my point there in showing that, I'll get back to some of these photos in a minute, is that this area over here has been recently cleared within jurisdiction. It was a natural area, not a part of maintained yard space. These are stumps, probably of cedar trees, so you can just kind of see this area here has been recently cleared. Trees cleared, brush cleared, without a permit. Now closer to the wetlands, this is right at essentially one of the wetland flags where it looks like just technically fill has been dumped. Really what it looks like is, grow containers just being dumped right next to the wetlands, probably fertilizer, whatnot. A couple of those areas of what looks like stone dust right next to the salt marsh. Areas where you can see some stuff has been dumped, brush has been pushed around, that sort of stuff. It just gives a general impression that they've been trying to kind of make as much usable space in the yard as they can, which I get, but in this area, given the sensitivity of the salt marsh, there is no buffer to the salt marsh, there is no buffer on the wetland. I did go out and confirm the wetland line today with Brad and agreed on it, but there is no buffer at all to any of the wetland there. So I think, given the sensitivity of the site, that this is a good opportunity to try to get some protection for that. And I think, like I said, what they're asking for in terms of the addition is not something that the commission would typically have a problem with in permitting, but given what I saw as far as the condition of the site, I think it's worthwhile trying to get some sort of mitigation there. So I did discuss that with Brad on site today, that some sort of meaningful, you're not looking for a 5-foot strip, something meaningful that will protect the salt marsh a little better and define a usable space in the yard. Whereas this entire area here on the side, which is relatively large, has been cleared sort of in lieu of a protected area with conservation posts going forward. So I don't know if Brad, it was just today, so I would doubt that Brad had time to prepare anything. But that would be my recommendation, is that as long as you're getting protection of the resource areas going forward, that the commission should have no problem issuing the permit for the addition.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So, is it 10 feet, 20 feet? Is it posts? Is it a rail? Is it trees? Is it bushes? Is it natural plantings? Is it?
I would say significant and meaningful. And I don't think that restoration always has to be expensive. In some cases, I think you can put conservation posts up and just see what grows back. In other cases, you may not want to rely on that. You want to see things establish a little quicker. Here, you may want a little bit of both. Maybe you want to mandate that there's going to be a wetlands person in charge of overseeing it and notifying us of it, so that I don't have to be putting it on my list of things to do to go down there and check on it and see how it's growing. But I would say conservation posts or a split rail with conservation placards delineating an area that adequately protects the salt marsh and the BVW, and put some sort of a plan together for relatively quick establishment, while also allowing whatever's there for native, wetland and buffer plants to pop back up if they're still there.
And so that's one of those little 2-foot high mini fences, or that's like a 4-foot fence?
I mean, our standard for conservation posts is a 4-foot 4x4 installed half in the ground, half above. So I would say at a minimum, you want 2 feet visible. If they want
Right, but I'm
more,
saying if we say we're gonna want a fence, can we do one of those little 2-foot mini fences so it's not obnoxious to the view?
I would say what we want is conservation placards maintained in perpetuity, and they can put on their plan, on the restoration plan, whatever they want. I think the commission can work with people if they want to not look at conservation posts and they'd rather have a split rail fence, as long as it's at least 2 feet tall.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think the commission needs to mandate one way or the other.
Well, I'm not saying mandate, we just kind of probably wanna
Yeah.
give them some guidance, right? So
I
that-
think minimum of 2 feet. For some reason in the past, the commission was doing 1 foot above ground, and
not
go
enough.
try to find them.
Yeah.
Especially if it's in a wet area, you just can't see them there,
Yeah.
because the vegetation grows up above them. So minimum 2 feet. If they want to do it bigger, if they want it to look a certain way, fine, as long as everything behind it is protected and is not part of your yard maintenance routine and does not have dumping and pruning and all that.
So for their personal aesthetic, higher than that if they wish?
Sure. So I don't know how the commission would want to handle something like this, where, everything else seems to be in order except for what I need to work out with Jed for the administrative record. You
Well,
can,
I have-
you
I
can
do have-
continue and have them come back, or
I
you
have
can
some other
do-
questions though.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so, and I'm not sure who's on the screen, so it says existing driveway, but I don't see a new driveway, so what's happening with the new driveway?
I'll let Jed
Sure.
answer that.
Sure, let me just pull that up 1 second, please.
You can share your screen if you want.
Okay. Let me just, share screen. Okay, everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So, no plan changed at all for the driveway? Basically just leave it as is?
Is there already a little turnaround where those two little orange lines are? If you could zoom in on that plan, the plan I'm showing on, that's online is a little turnaround or something up close. Right there. Can you zoom in on that? On the
Sure.
driveway?
So you want to know what those lines are?
I know it's
I
not
can
on
pull
that,
up-
it's not on that plan,
Yeah.
but the plan that I'm looking
Yeah,
at.
I can pull up, yep, I can pull up the original,
Yeah.
existing conditions plan. Just bear with me a minute, please.
No, on this plan that I have in front of me right now,
Yeah,
shows a
yeah.
little turnaround with brown lines around it. And then and that may not be a turnaround, it may be measurements, I can't say exactly what you're calling out. There's a line that says access area, I think, and then there's little brown lines to it.
Oh, that's the temp construction access area. Sorry, I wasn't sure what you were referring to. So yeah, just adjacent to the existing driveway, you know, one of the NOI checklist requirements is to show the construction access area, so that's what that is.
So the driveway now goes under, it's a garage under on the end of the house, is that what's happening now?
There's not a garage, it's just a single-family dwelling. I can pull up some pictures, but there's no proposed change to the driveway itself. In fact, there's actually a reduction in net
Yeah, no,
impervious.
I
due to
recognize
due
the
to the
fact,
addition.
I recognize the fact there's no proposed change, but what I
Yeah.
don't wanna have happen is have a change happen after the fact, and it affects the calculations, and then we're back here. So, it sounds like.
Understood, yep, understood.
No, hang on one
I'll make
second, hang on one second.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
my strong suggestion would be to meet with the client and find out if there is a change, and let's get it on there now, seeing as we have to move other couple things on the plan anyways. I don't think it's gonna affect anything adversely, but I'd like to just get it on the plan now, because it just doesn't look to me that that's usable the way it's existing. I'm a firm believer of just let's get it all on the plan now so we all know what's happening.
And if I could just kind of piggyback on what Buzz is asking for, I think it's important to move these 50, 40, 30 lines to reflect the most inward resource area at the same time. So if you're going to give us a revised plan, I'd like to see all the changes added to it for the record.
Okay, sorry about that. I had some house issues going on here. Okay, so with respect to the driveway, there's no proposed changes at all. There's nothing to change, there's no updates to make. I just want to clarify that. I already went over that with you.
You already went over with who?
The owner.
Okay. All right. Just wanted for the record that you had your chance. Yep, so, it sounds like you need to move some lines. We're gonna be looking to clean up all the things that are close to the resource area and some type of meaningful restoration with some type of fencing or posts.
Understood, yeah, all that seems very reasonable, and all those points are well taken. I know I spoke to the owner today with respect to some of the trees. He said there were a couple dead ones that had fallen down due to nor'easter storms.
Yeah, and
they had
that's
those cut
fine,
up,
let's
so-
just get it cleaned up.
Yep,
On that note,
understood.
there are still a couple of very big dead trees there, including directly over the carport looking thing there, so, Yeah. I think.
Yeah, so if you're
I think
gonna-
how
so-
everybody's aware, like even dead tree removal technically
Yeah,
needs some
so if
form
you
of
want, so
permitting
now's the
conservation.
time, if you're doing work, if you wanna get rid of those dead trees, let's get them on the plan and make it part of this permit.
Alternatively, in the future, you can come in and file an admin review, we can go out and, but, yeah, point being, you could just do it now.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it'd be
let's
part of
get
the same
it,
thing.
I'm a firm believer, just get it all on the plan, what you wanna do, and then you can set sail and we know exactly what's happening.
Understood, okay, we'll confirm with the owner if there's any other removal desires, I'll say, that they have, and include that on the plan and pictures if needed, for any of that further work. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and how many weeks do you need?
Brad, in terms of putting together a mitigation plan, what do you think for a timeline?
I could be ready for their next meeting, you know,
Can we fit them
so
on?
whatever works.
Well, don't,
Just the
Brad,
commission.
Brad, don't forget, we need it at least a week ahead of time so we can look at it.
Right, well, I figured, well, you're gonna meet in what, 2 weeks?
Yeah,
Okay, I could have this within early next week for Jed to be able to, you know, confirm and get into the commission.
okay. All right, well, make a motion to continue hearing to the 24th? Is that correct?
Right. Sounds ambitious, but,
Huh?
it sounds ambitious to me, but yes.
All right, April 24th, that's my motion.
All right. Do we have a
Section
second? That will be section what?
B.
Section B?
Section B.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, great.
Second.
So I have a motion to move this to continue this to 4/24/24, Section B. Thank you, and we will, let's vote on it. Dot?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Colina's yes. Buzz?
Yes?
Marilyn?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
That's unanimous. We'll see you then.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you
night.
very much. Okay. You'd think it'd be over, but it's not. We're going to move on to the rest of the enforcement matters,
Yes.
beginning with 56 Main Street. You guys ready? Thanks for your patience. And just remember to identify yourselves for the record.
Jacob Barnes, co-owner of 56 Main Street.
Adam Harrington, co-owner of 56 Main Street.
Thank you. All right, Matt, what do we want from them?
So after the last, so at the last meeting, the commission asked, or I should say the commission and the landowners agreed on that they would hire a wetland scientist to poke some holes in the driveway under my review so that we could see if a wetland was actually filled. After that, they reached out to me with some historic imagery, a picture from 1971, a picture from 2005, and paraphrasing, but that essentially they felt that those pictures showed that the area was already developed, that the extent of development went back to where the current extent is, something along those lines. So I responded and I said, for starters, that I didn't necessarily agree with that statement based on the imagery, and that the commission had already chosen a path forwards, so their only real option was to do what the commission asked or come back tonight and present to the commission. And that's what they want to do, so that's why they're here.
Here you go.
Hi, everyone. So as Matt said, that's the kind of synopsis. And again, just to recap, kind of, we bought this building in 2018 at 56 Main Street. We found out that it was built in 1900. It also had motels, et cetera, on the property. We do have some pictures of some things I'd like to show that was imagery. I know that I have to talk into the microphone, so I'll try to talk into the microphone and describe it, and then eventually.
We can get you a portable mic, so,
Okay,
Could you-
that would be great.
yep. Hold on 1 second, you'll
but-
get it.
Unless there's a way to put these.
For starters, I can put the 1971 and the 2005 on the screen.
Okay.
That'll work, that'll help us to start, yep. And I do apologize, the 1971, I believe, online, I have a picture of that. Online, it actually shows our illustration a little bit better. But essentially, you know, we're kind of here to establish that there was a parking lot here prior to us even buying the property. And this is from 1971. And thank you. So, hello? Is that on?
We'll wait for the thumbs up from PAC TV, or the local scene. Can you hear him on the,
Can you hear me?
yeah, you're good.
Okay. So this is our property here. You know, again, lack of better terms, it may come a little bit further, et cetera. But this is where our current building resides, and this is currently where the parking lot is. And at this point, right here, in the 2005, if you wouldn't mind switching over. So you see that they had motels, so there was like these type buildings. There's another one at this point right here. And one picture I didn't send to you that I was able to figure out. Hold on 1 sec. Is actually this corner of our parking lot, and I can share this with all of you. But if you look closely right here, yeah, maybe that will help. He'll be our illustrator. There's actually a foundation, the existing foundation for that structure that is where this driveway and clearing leads to. And then this is the back corner, like the parking lot kind of goes like this in this area.
So
And you can see,
Here's what he's talking about back here.
Oh, yeah.
This is the old foundation.
Would you like to see these as well?
Those cinder blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the old foundation with the cabin.
Thank you.
and again, the last one is kind of the just most recent GIS map that I was able to pull up last week. And this is our wetland area in the way back part of our property. It's over 200 feet away from where our property is by an aerial shot to that point.
Which was originally identified to us when we bought the property and got the permits to build our building and get the permitting for the correct number of parking spots and everything.
For the
essentially-
record, that's the DEP wetlands layer, which is available on GIS. It's based on aerial imagery. It's not intended to be 100% accurate in terms of where wetlands
Well,
are.
I think that's kind of what was brought to us when we got the permitting
to buy the lot,
Yeah.
to build our structure, et cetera. And this is just kind of where we're at. It's like, we're not trying to change the use of the building that we bought 6 years ago. We just got a new tenant, which has sparked this interest. We've done everything right. I mean, we're a builder in town. We don't go and screw things up, so to speak. We want to do everything right by you guys. We've done everything right with every build that we've done. And instead of trying to spend $2,000 on something that, to prove that we've done the right thing, I just feel like some of this imagery from 1971, 50 years ago to current, is proving that we did not build this, we didn't fill in a wetland, it was there, and we're just trying to make sure that we can keep going the way we're going. Again, it went through permitting when the previous property owner wanted to build that back building that we built.
That was in 2016.
That was in 2016. They went through the whole permitting process and got a permit. We couldn't transfer that permit to us when we bought the property in 2018. And now we're just, again, trying to essentially just keep going the way we've been going, because we wouldn't have bought the property and I don't think we could have built the back building if we didn't have that parking lot out back. Sorry.
Two questions? Yes.
Well, as I remember the last meeting,
Mhm.
the real question was understanding all the aerial views and the parking lot and all of that stuff. But again, the question came down to, well, was it filled in?
Well, that,
That's what we're
And
trying
that's
to
why
illustrate,
we
that it
asked,
was
that's
not
why we
filled.
asked for the wetland eval with Matt on site to see that happen. So that's where we were coming from in spite of
Right.
aerial views, and that's what I wanted to say.
and my only question, so like, again, going back to just last week, I printed this off from the GIS map, and I understand that it may be lagged or anything like that, but if it wasn't shown as a wetland last week, how would it have been shown 50 years ago as a wetland that was filled in either, is all I'm trying to understand, I guess, is the better question. Because again, we're not trying to do the wrong thing here, it's just, we're trying to go with not opening Pandora's box on everything that may come up later on down the road. It's just to be fair to people like ourselves that we just,
Yeah, and I think the photo that's up now is the most misrepresentative of what the land is now. I think, like, I guess what I'm getting at is, so the building was built in 1900. It's been there for 125 years. And if there's, a couple years of photos of it where it's been the same for 120 years, where the parking lot has been, we just don't understand how we need to go through this process, I guess, to where we're not changing the use, it's always been the same. It's been like that since the, early 1900s. And now, I guess, what we're trying to decide is why do we have to go through this process and spend this money where it's been like this since we bought it, since the early 1900s, and now it's like Adam said, why,
we just have a new tenant.
Yeah.
That's the only reason we're coming through the process, is a new tenant.
Selena, may I
Jim,
speak?
yep, just identify yourself for the record.
It's Jim Franklin. So, Matt, can I share?
Sure.
You need to, yep. So I know we've looked at, can you guys see my screen? Is there aerial imagery up?
That's good.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you guys know I have access to kind of enhanced aerial imagery, right? So this overhead view is from 2008, okay? If you're looking, you can see the house, you can see the driveway, you can see that there is some kind of driveway that extends back. But you can also see some general depression back in this kind of lower left-hand corner of the image, right? If we were to zoom to more recent, you can see that some of the depression area looks like it might possibly have been filled, right? So I think there is some question here, just how far back. I think it's pretty clear.
A lot of
from what
those
we just saw from 2006 that there was some driveway that went back, but it doesn't look near as extensive as what we see here today. So I think it's important just to, if we're looking at the imagery, that we need to kind of look at it from that perspective, if you guys are going to,
Yeah, so,
Jim, are you there?
going back.
so the trees on the right-hand side of the lot over there are, it's obviously summertime. There's some pretty sizable trees on that right-hand lot line, and that's probably covering a lot of what is the driveway.
I didn't hear a question in that. Were you
So
questioning
Jim,
something?
if you go back to the picture that you were showing there, this area here is actually that exact the existing foundation wall is still right in this area, and this was the turn point of our parking lot, but the existing foundation is, I don't know, 20.
Right, yeah.
Now.
I think if you can go back,
Yeah,
like,
that
can you
seems
go
way
back
to
to 1960, or 19, what, was it 1971?
The
Was the best illustration of it, because it actually had lined parking spaces
The one
on the picture, but
the
it's,
online one does show it a little
Yeah.
bit better. But again, I don't know if this is our property line or if that's just an overview.
yeah, because our property line is
Yeah,
more,
because this is more along the lines of the property line. But that's where that foundation wall that Jay showed you in the pictures is from.
I'm going to ask the conservation agent if he can weigh in for a moment here.
Oh, sure, sorry.
Yeah, Jim, do you mind stopping and share, and I'll reshare?
Yep.
For starters, it's never my intention to try to force enforcement. Everything is always up to the commission. The reason why your property was reviewed is because you filed with the ZBA. So when you file with the ZBA, everything comes in front of every other department reviews. It raised red flags when it came across my desk. There is no such thing as grandfathering with wetlands law. It's always buyer beware. It doesn't matter that the DEP wetlands layer shows something wrong. None of that really matters. There have been some really bad situations where people bought property that ended up costing them a ton of money because of previously occurring wetlands being filled or being modified, and courts upheld that. It's always buyer beware. It's always on you to do your due diligence and know what you're buying, even when it would be hard to figure that out because somebody had filled in an agricultural way where it just looks like grass, those sort of things. So it's just important to say that as far as grandfathering, if those houses, those motels were still there and that existing driveway was still there, and it had been that way for 100 years, then the commission can't come to you and say, you can't have that building there, that building has to move, or that driveway has to move. If that condition changes, especially if an area renaturalizes, all of that is gone. There's nothing. And even if that was still there, that wouldn't mean that you can change a configuration and do it differently whenever. Like, there's wetlands regulations now that are applicable now. And town council has told the commission recently that even in situations where somebody wants to raise and rebuild a house that predated the wetlands regs that's very close to a wetland, the commission does not have to allow that, and there's some leeway in the courts on those situations. So this isn't to beat up on you in any way, it's just to lay it out sort of how all that stuff works. So, like I said prior, there were obviously buildings back there and there was some sort of a driveway back there, but that condition was not maintained straight through. And the series of photos that we went through at the last commission meeting show that there were mature trees back in that area and there was canopy cover there.
yeah, I mean, I
Those
think it
buildings
was,
were
I think
gone.
that, I mean, you guys are
I gotta-
welcome to
I
come
gotta
down and look
finish.
at it, but I think that photo is misrepresentative of what is actually there.
I understand that was one. I'll share that series again just to go through for the commission, because like I said before, the plan that was submitted to the ZBA indicated there are wetlands back there regardless what was done as far as at least the driveway back there would need permitting, right? So you're at least talking about permitting in retro. The real concern was based on the very next property over having a recent wetland delineation done. That was after those buildings were taken out of there and indicated there was a wetland in the vicinity of where that driveway has now been built. That was the concern. Let me figure out, there we go. 2017, 2019, I mean, you can say that some of these are deceiving, but it shows a lot of canopy cover behind that building until this photo in 2020.
Which again, we finished.
And then in 2021, it goes further, and then in 2023, and if you overlaid these pictures in terms of where the buildings are with 2005, you will see that this parking lot goes further back than that driveway did in 2005. It's just, there has been modification there. That was why the commission said at the last meeting, in conjunction with the fact that the neighboring property delineation indicated that the wetlands came much further up that way than what was on the ZBA plan, makes it so that the commission in my opinion, should review whether a wetland was filled there and then deal with it at that point. It's not to say that necessarily you guys did it. Maybe it was done before that. We don't know that. All we're doing is looking at aerial imagery through the years. It's clear that trees were cleared within jurisdiction and a parking area was installed, but there was indication that there may have been a wetland filled, and that's all we have.
And the question I just kind of have to the commission at this point is, so again, as I say, we try to go through the right steps and so forth. We did not change, between whatever year this is and whatever year the last one was that you just showed was. When we bought the building, we built the back building, we built the parking lot to whatever was there. We didn't change anything from that point forward. So whether it was, I know we finished the building early 2019 to 2024 right now. We have not changed that building or that property at all. So if this essentially is the wetlands that was used, 50 years ago, and also when we bought the property, it went through all permitting twice through this entire town hall, how is it all of a sudden becoming an issue now, saying that there was wetlands on our property, when, again, it wasn't brought to our attention there was wetlands on the property 6 years ago?
Partially because it goes back to what I was talking about before. Everything is always on the owner of the property. Like I explained to you before, now we have a great system where we all work together, right?
Right.
So we have a system now when you apply for a building permit, ZBA, anything else, that gets shared with every department gets a chance to review it. That hasn't always been the case. I started here in 2021, I don't know how things were done before that. It's entirely possible. We've had other enforcement issues since I've been here, but early on, where the similar thing happened. Somebody got a building permit, they didn't check, or all they did maybe was check the GIS, they didn't check anything else. There were wetlands much closer, it was an enforcement issue, and they ended up having to do restoration, they had to do filing and retro. That's just unfortunately the way that sometimes that works. I don't know if anybody in conservation reviewed any of those building permits, but all I know is what we have in front of us, and that's, I get it, but.
And you get, exactly what I'm getting at is then, like, are we gonna go to somebody, Jane Smith down the road here and say, hey, somebody locally next door was doing a project and they showed that now you have wetlands on in your driveway, you gotta rip up your driveway? Is that, that's what I'm trying, that's where we're kinda at, and I just don't understand how we become responsible for something when we went through the proper procedures.
It's always on the landowner if they're, like, so you have the DEP wetlands layer, that's step one, right? So that shows roughly where the wetlands might be, right? It's not always, it's very infrequently accurate in terms of the extent of the wetlands, but it usually indicates there are wetlands there. What it doesn't indicate is that there aren't wetlands there, right? There are tons of smaller wetlands that aren't gonna show up on that type of a system. There are vernal pools, there are lots of little features that aren't gonna show up. Streams aren't gonna show up on that system. It's just always on the landowner to make sure that they're following all the regulations, and that's, I don't know how else to.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yes, please, Buzz.
So I'm looking at an image from the 1990s on the ortho-based imagery base map. And it roughly, you can clearly see where the old foundation is for whatever was back there. And it's roughly 125 feet from the old building to the back of that old foundation. So I guess the question is, in this new imagery, what's that distance, number one? Number two, let's pretend that we do an auger and we see that there's some layer, B layer or C layer, that's in the auger. How do we determine how long ago that was covered over?
Interesting question.
And thank you, and that's essential, and Matt, we've been working great together, I have no problem, but.
Time out.
Sorry.
Time out. So this only works if we take turns talking.
Sorry.
That's all right. So the first thing we need to know, in my opinion, is what the distance is from the back of the original structure to where that original foundation ended, number one. And number two, I guess we need to hear from someone that's gonna explain to me how they're gonna determine when that wetland, if, let's pretend there is evidence that that was filled, how we're gonna determine when that was happening?
So I have seen filled wetlands. I've dealt with a couple of those since I've been here, and what I would say from my experience with it is I'm not gonna be the one to determine that. I think in those cases, you're gonna ask the applicant to determine that. But I think that it would likely be apparent based on what kind of material you're going through before you get there. If all you're going through is the material that was recently installed and spread around, and then you're getting to wetland soils under that, then I would suspect that it was recently filled. If you're going through a bunch of random fill and pieces of old buildings and old other types of, driveway materials, broken up asphalt, then I would suggest it's probably historic fill.
And do we know, and I would agree with that, do we?
Now,
do
just
we-
to add to one thing before we get to there, the reason why this popped up in the first place was a recent filing on the abutting property within the last handful of years that indicated that there was a wetland in that location. If it was historically filled, I would highly doubt they would have indicated that.
And so, well, that was one of my next question is, do we know where the actual wetland line is now behind the property?
I only have definitive wetland lines from the neighboring property. There is a wetlands line on the ZBA application for 56 Main Street that doesn't necessarily line up with the one on 38 Crescent, but I also don't know necessarily when the delineation was done for 56 Main Street. I did not review, it was not something that I needed to review for whether it was
Right,
within the last
so
3
I'm
years.
looking at this Anride plan for 38 Crescent Street. That's the one you're referring to?
Yes.
I'm sorry, could I add something to that?
It's just,
Just hold on one second and.
I promise
let
we're not
Mr.
gonna cut you
Artiano
short.
finish.
and I'm promising I'm gonna listen to you.
Yeah.
You just gotta let me
Yeah.
do my thing. So, as we know, that they're not allowed to show wetlands on someone else's property.
They are not allowed to confirm wetlands on somebody else's property, so that's why you won't see wetland flags for that. They'll see, it says approximate 50-foot buffer zone.
Right, so what I'm saying is you're inferring, you're essentially connecting the dots between there to infer where you think the wetland is.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir?
Sorry. Matt, you had an illustration the last meeting of where, where
Your inference.
inference was. Do you have that from the last
Yeah,
meeting?
and again, for the record, that I don't, because both of you just said, I don't think that's my inference, that's what's on the plan.
Yeah, well,
that
yeah,
was-
the,
that was
well,
submitted.
roughly where it was.
So, like we both said, that does not delineate that wetland, but that indicates there was a wetland there that they knew was on an abutting property that they could not access.
Okay, well, we have a picture of that, like where the inference was. And, I mean, this photo illustrates that there's obviously no wetlands. It's probably 5 feet above where that inference was, and it's obviously not wetlands now.
When was the photo taken?
This photo was just taken the other day.
But isn't that the
Yeah, I mean-
question, that the wetlands has been filled?
No, I'm
It's-
talking about the neighboring property where it was marked as wetlands, but it's somebody's yard, it's middle of their yard. It's,
Are you talking about the C6, C7, C8 flags? Because we're talking about this right here, where it says approximate 50-foot wetland buffer,
Yeah,
which
so-
indicates that there's a wetland.
so in the previous meeting, there was like a red line, you had an
Yeah, you
illustration
had
with a red line going onto
yellow.
our property.
Oh, yeah, I just circled.
Roughly where it was?
Yeah.
I just circled to indicate
So
the
that-
approximate
so
50-foot
that area
wetland buffer.
was, I'm sorry, that area was basically, that area was, where the wetlands, where it was marked is up here in the yard, of the neighboring yard.
The wetland was not in the neighbor's yard, it was on your property. What I circled was just to indicate the
Yeah, what-
50-foot wetland buffer, which shows up right here. So all I did was I drew a circle around this
Right.
to highlight it.
Which
But
is right here.
So they're not saying there's any wetlands here. The wetland was on your property here, according to this wetland delineation. And that, when you look at where this building is and kind of measure back, is the area in question, which was what kind of started
Alright.
this conversation.
All right.
So
That is the area in question, so, I mean,
I'm confused.
and that's after,
It sounds like the
Months of
only
rain.
thing that you're wanting us to ask is for them to go and do a delineation.
No, not even. And I'm not asking the commission technically anything. At the
Okay.
last meeting, it was, the commission said, my recommendation was, we don't need a full delineation here, we need to see if there was a wetland that was filled. I said, regardless, procedurally, there's a retro filing needed anyways, to being within jurisdiction, which wouldn't be a huge deal, and I had said wouldn't set any timeline back or really be an issue with any new tenant or anything like that. The real issue that could be problematic was if a wetland was filled, which is why the recommendation was to determine whether there was a wetland filled.
Okay.
Um,
So
the
it's
thing
not
tonight was sort of them asking to reconsider based on the extra information, which that's sort of what. the subject
And
commission
that's
asked.
essentially the photographs that we've given you in the illustrations, showing that there was a parking lot there previously that we just
The only
essentially
thing that, from
maintained.
those old pictures, was that asphalt or was that just gravel?
at one point it was asphalt.
really can't
It was-
tell.
The asphalt was pulled up.
I'm sorry?
At one point it was asphalt, and the asphalt was removed.
Or broken up, so
Yeah.
to speak. It was a mixture of gravel, asphalt, concrete, numerous of things from, 50 years. All we did was just clean it up to
Okay.
make it to what you see in the picture.
Yeah,
So I think on the 1971 plan, it's clear that there was clearing back there. You can't really tell anything else
Can I
based on
actually,
that.
if,
There's no, definite paving or anything like that.
Yeah.
When you look at the 2005
I'm sorry, that was the-
plan,
that was the
it's
picture
clear
that I was talking
There
about.
is some driveway there, but you can't tell, I mean, that could be concrete, it could be gravel.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
It's
yeah.
hard to tell. And again, I think if you did do some measurements there based on where these buildings are, I do think that what we're looking at right now is further back than that. But again, I haven't done an overlay, I haven't measured all that, to
And
me,
that's-
when I first looked at that, I don't think that that's necessarily equivalent. It's clear there was development back there, there's no debating that, and there's been a lot of development in and adjacent to wetlands. that
Right.
Predated wetlands
Right.
regs and things
yeah.
were the way they
It
were.
wasn't even considered.
Correct.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, and that's right. Could you go back to the 1971 picture real quick, if you wouldn't mind, apologize. So it's a little bit clearer on the picture, on a computer, but if you look, these are actually lines for parking spaces.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
I'm just letting you know, in the sense of, you were saying materials that
Oh,
were
it
used
had to
back
be
then.
some hard surface, yeah.
It was
I see.
something that was being able to be used as a parking
Right,
area.
okay.
Let me see if I can pull up. You can keep the discussion going. I'll just see if I can pull that up on historic aerials so we can get a.
Yeah, that's all I looked it up on.
And so while he's doing that, so what is your request?
Just to keep going as
Yeah,
we're
business as
doing right
usual.
now. We've been doing it for 6 years. The only reason, again, sparked the interest, our new tenant came in, he was doing right by the town, we applied for a business license. Being that he's a golf cart guy, it was extracted as a automotive type of scenario. So he needed our help, and we helped him through it to get his business license, and next thing you know, now we're into this, but again, business as usual is all we're trying to keep it as for 6 years.
Could I clarify, because perhaps I'm misunderstanding, but when you left the last meeting, it was my impression that our wetland scientists would be hired to determine whether there was a wetland there, and that my understanding was that that was what was going to happen. Are you coming back to ask us to reconsider that?
Correct.
Correct, yeah. I spoke to Matt, I think it was the next day or the day after that, and asked, I showed him some of this imagery and said, hey,
Based on
you know,
new imagery?
I think that doing some research here, that there was some availability to see that this is a little bit more clearer with the imagery. And he said, the two options, essentially, hire the consultant and do the borings, or, you know, come back to this meeting, so which we figured, hey, it's worth it to come back to the meeting.
That's right, I take myself right out of the process.
Okay, so absent any more questions from the commission, both online and present, are there, I think we can.
My opinion is,
This is the 1971, so I think what he's talking about is right here, there's.
The hashing?
So that hashing there is the picture that you saw with the foundation. That's where that
That's the
foundation
corner
is,
of
which is
our
the back of our
back parking lot.
Yeah, and that's been there a long time, because when you back to that 1990s view.
Yeah, that's.
it's
Yeah,
still-
and
that
that's
wall-
1971, yeah.
The wall is still there.
yeah,
Matt, can you clarify something for me? Let's say this is correct, and in 1971, there was a hardscape parking lot there. Would that matter? There's still wetlands. If a wetlands was paved over in 1968, are they still obligated to?
If the parking lot
mitigate?
is still there,
Yes,
then.
it is still there.
If it hasn't been touched and it's still there, the commission can't go and say, you can't have a parking lot there, you have to
Right.
remove that. If they want to do any kind of modification to the property at all, still requires permitting, because you are right next to and technically on top of a wetland, although that would get a little hairy. There's no grandfathering for that.
Right.
The only grandfathering is that the commission can't come tell you, you can't have that thing that predates the wetlands regs. But once a building is removed, a driveway is ripped up, a parking area is ripped up, that's not valid anymore. And that's what I think where my approach to these kind of things comes from, is that over time, as it's clear that things were demolished, and sort of that came from, it's a short talk with the building inspector, that the previous owner of the property demolished all those buildings, and that at the time, he had kind of said, like, demolish those buildings, you're not gonna be able to rebuild them.
Right.
Right, so
Yeah, they
that-
lost their grandfather in
where-
that aspect.
Between that and the fact that as you look through the imagery, the area does regrow with almost complete canopy cover back there. To me, that's why it was worth bringing in front of the commission, because it's not that the area was consistently paved the whole time and was consistently this developed area that didn't change. It was used as something that was never permitted, that likely predated the regs, and then it went back into more of a natural condition.
And they went to repave it?
then something was changed back there, and again, if there was no wetland there, then it's just simply a, hey, you're within 100 feet, you need to file. And it's a pretty easy filing process for something like that, I think. But if there was a wetland filled during that process of making that parking area in the last couple of years, then that would be where the problem would lie.
But that's where I come in to say, based upon the ZBA's regulations, on the square footage of undercover roof, so to speak, we have to follow parking spaces limitations, or availability. When we built that building, that would fall under that, and that's the same reason our new tenant had to go through the process here. So we had to have that parking lot 6 years ago, which is why it was permitted essentially to have that, because it was existing. And
Nothing's changed.
And nothing has changed. And again, Matt, I know you weren't here. This is the tough part. You weren't here. I understand that.
It doesn't.
So we're confusing a little bit here, right? So ZBA is one lane, conservation is another lane, right? We're only talking about the conservation side of it,
Right, but it's been in front of
If
conservation
there's a filling
twice
of
the
the
last
wetlands,
Let Mr.
then
Franklin
that's a
make a
loss
statement.
of resource area, and that's something that, this commission is supposed to protect against any loss of, or taking of the resource area.
Can you all hear him?
So,
Can we get a little more volume on the speaker? Is that possible? We can't really hear him. Is that him?
I can
Jim,
hear him.
Jim, did you shut your microphone off?
I can hear him.
No, nothing's changed on my side. Okay? So,
Yeah.
so the long and short of it is this, right? ZBA, conservation, separate. If there's a taking of the resource area, then we have to make sure that it's restored. If we believe that the adjacent parcel that was planned, that was prepared by a professional is accurate, which somebody went through an adjudication period back then and came up with an acceptance of that, then we have to understand that a professional said that there was a wetland 50 feet from the wetland line, right? Could be 47, could be 56. I don't know, I don't really care, but the fact that it's there points to that there was a resource area at some point. So whatever changed in the time that that map was done and we're looking at this parcel now, we have to understand that the two don't jive together. Whether or not we're looking at overhead imagery, to me, it shows a picture, but there's a lot more to be seen, right? So in my case, it's going to be something that has to be sussed out, right? And because right now we have things that just don't jive up, and it's indicating that somebody filled a wetland. So I think from that perspective, I think you guys were on the right track last week when you guys decided to explore to bring in a professional and explore and come to a determination on whether or not something was filled or not. Because if it's not a filling, then you have a pretty straightforward process.
The only thing there, Jim, is it costs a lot of money to bring somebody out and coordinate that, and instead of just moving on with business as we have been doing for 6 years, we actually have to defend ourselves at this point for nothing that we've done.
It doesn't matter who did it. And people have come before us with the same situation over and over again, and they had no choice but to hire somebody to do it. It's the nature of what happens in conservation, and I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
Well, my 2 cents
It's just
is,
important to understand that the regulations point to what path needs to be taken, right? So in this case, it's not whether or not, you know, you're gonna be spending some money to determine if there was something. It's that there was cause to figure out if there was a taking, because there's enough anecdotal evidence that says that there was some kind of taking of the resource area. So from that perspective, I feel your pain. It's not that I want to be involved in any of these conversations. It's just that we volunteer to do certain things. We have to make sure that we're performing within those regulations. And I think that the regulations point us in a certain direction on this. So it's not that any of us, I'll just speak for myself. I don't want to tell you you have to do it, but at this point, I see that there's enough here that says it's probably the prudent thing to do if we're supposed to be performing our duties within the Act, in the regulations that we essentially swore an oath to do. So it's not done like.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And Matt
and
has
then I have one more comment.
okay.
Just in response to what you just said, and again, I'm not trying to beat up on you guys, and again, we're just looking at aerial imagery, and that was the point of getting down and actually looking at that. But looking at the series between 2016 and 2023, I personally and I know the imagery sometimes can be a little bit misleading, but to me, it looks like between 2019 and 2021, 2023, trees are cleared and the parking lot is expanded. I can't see anything else when I'm looking at that. When you're looking at 2016, 2017, leaf off and leaf on, 2019, there's trees almost right up to that second building. And then the next series show it expanding and expanding until you get to 2023, where it's clear looking at that it's leaf on and there's nothing overhanging anywhere near that second building. So it's clear that there was modification within jurisdiction. So again, at a minimum, it would need permitting and retro, but that expansion right there is, I think, part of why we have these two things coming together. One is that expansion, and two is the indication that before that expansion happened, a wetland scientist who was on the adjacent property felt like they saw a wetland on your property in that location where the parking lot is. So that's why I
I
think,
want to say something.
and again, I understand it, these things cost money, I never take that lightly, but the commission's not requiring a full delineation or anything. It's very targeted right now at, you know, was that filled, was it not filled? I think.
And Buzz?
I just have a comment.
I think Buzz had one thing to say, and
No,
then we'll ask
I'll
Marilyn.
let my esteemed colleague go first.
All right.
I yield my time.
What a gentleman. Again, in order to really confirm yes or no, it needs to be an on-the-ground thing, aside from all the aerials. So that's one of my points. The other point is I do feel your pain, because if all of this shakes out and now you're going to have to look at your parking spaces again, I don't know if that's what's in the back of your mind, but I understand that. But again, in order to confirm this, I think we need to do the on-the-ground auger confirmation.
You
Back
done?
to you.
All right,
Madam Chair?
yes.
So, if you look at the 1990s imagery, there's clearly a foundation there from an old building of some type. It's very clearly in the image. And it's 129 feet from the back of the original structure. If you go to the current measurement, it's 129 feet, 0.5 inches. So, to me, that back edge has been there a long time. My concern with the digging, or the augering, or whatever we're gonna do, is that could have been filled in the 1960s, or the 1940s, or the 1920s. And when it's, in my opinion, and I've dug a lot of holes, it's gonna be really hard to say this was filled in 2021.
It could be, it might not be. And again, you know,
That's my only
to
concern.
go back to, I don't have I could look at the date on that plan for the ANRAD, but at that time period, there was what appeared to a wetland scientist to be a wetland
Yeah,
there.
but
I think,
in this imagery, there was a building there at some point. So, again,
At some point.
I'm nervous about digging a hole and make a determination on something that may or not be actionable in a real sense.
I think most wetland professionals are going to understand what they're looking at when they're going through fill.
Okay.
And again, this is just being brought to the commission. I have no stake in this. I think everything has to be
I don't
dealt with
think,
in a certain
we're
way.
just talking right now.
But the
Understood.
commission always has the right to go like, no, this is too much gray area, we don't want to touch it. And that's fine. It all just has to be talked out.
Understood.
And we appreciate all you guys' time, and literally, this is why we came back a second time here, is because let's hash it out.
So I think you're at the dig or no dig vote. I think that's where you're at.
I'll make a motion that we proceed as was originally planned at the last meeting.
And so that would be a decision to not reconsider last meeting, okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Thank you, Megan. Dot?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Colleen is a yes. Buzz?
I'm a no.
And Marilyn?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. We are not going to reconsider our determination from last meeting.
Okay.
But thank you so much for coming in, spending your time here. Appreciate it.
Just out of curiosity, what's the time frame that you're looking for?
Is a month enough time?
Yeah, again, it's just availability,
Work it out
pending
with Matt,
availability.
right?
Yeah, I would say typically the way we handle these things is at least you want to hear within a month that it's scheduled, because sometimes they get booked up like crazy. So I would
And-
say follow up with me, so we can make sure we get it scheduled. If you need any, we have a list of common wetland people if you don't have one.
No, we have, yeah,
You
we
do?
have
Okay.
plenty, but,
Cool.
and process works, you pick the spots, they pick the spots, it's delineated based upon whatever's on that
Yeah, I would say a little bit of both. We have an idea that we're looking at based on that plan, and really, all I want to make sure is that it's sufficient. I want to make sure that they cover enough of an area that, you know, you're not just poking 1 or 2 holes in the ground and going, hey, looks great, and then they're not just stopping at fill, because that's happened in the past, where throw an auger in and pull it up, and hey, there's nothing there, and move along, when there's really a buried wetland underneath if they had done 2 augers worth, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
All right,
Thanks,
thank you,
guys.
gentlemen. Just turn it off and put it on the podium, it'll be fine. Does it have a button?
You can just leave it on the podium.
You can just leave it there.
buildings, I don't know how to make.
You don't do electronics.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. And so we're going to move forward to the Braintree Avenue discussion. Is that what you're here for?
Just informational. I've never been involved in anything
All right. Well, you,
conservation-wise.
I
This
can,
is actually
I can
very
take this.
educational.
yeah, you get a little tiara at the end of this for sitting through. All right, Matt, want to update us on that?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a different enforcement thing. This is just, you know, sometimes you have situations that don't necessarily follow a clear black and white, I need to send a notice of violation. So in these situations, I'd like to bring it to the commission, have a discussion, have the commission make the decision for me. And then if I need to issue a notice of violation, I can get property owners here. This involves 2 properties. One is 2 Braintree Avenue, one is 11 Wharf Lane. These are the residents or owners of 11 Wharf Lane. I did say they did not need to be here tonight, the same thing I told the people at 2 Braintree. So all I would ask is that the commission not ask them to go up and answer for anything tonight. I just kind of want to go through what I know and have the commission make a decision. And what I told them is if the commission wants to discuss this, they would be scheduled at a future meeting to speak to anything.
So you just came and did this for the heck of it?
No, like I said, I've never been involved in
All right.
anything as a from a conservation standpoint. So
Okay.
this is just like more education. And I'm like one of those people. I just
All
need
right.
to know.
Well, thank you for your patience.
FOMO. I suffer from a lot of FOMO.
There you go.
So, residents of 2 Braintree Ave stopped by. They said that the neighbors at 11 Wharf had done some modifications to their property that had caused 2 Braintree Ave to flood or to have stormwater, you know, going through their property that is either that they didn't have before or that's at a higher rate. Typically, that would only be a zoning concern because you're not allowed to modify your property to give your neighbor your stormwater, but when you live on the ocean, then that stuff does wrap into our realm. So I said I would look into it. You know, we took a quick look, drive by, took a look through the aerial imagery. It was pretty clear both during and before the current owners of 11 Wharf Lane, there had been unpermitted modifications, and I can run through a series of imagery in a minute. You know, years before they bought the property, trees were removed pretty close to the coastal bank, and like half-circle driveway was put in. We have no evidence of a permit on that. And then more recently, additional trees have been cleared. A gravel parking area was put in, and I'm told that an area of lawn was raised up or something along those lines. We don't have any evidence of anything like that. The other thing that I found when I went through my review was that 2 Braintree Ave had also removed some trees and no evidence of a permit there. So I'll share my screen really quick on this. So I sent a letter to Braintree Ave, letting them know that I was going to have a conversation with the commission tonight and that they didn't need to be here, but that it was apparent from an imagery review that both they and their neighbors should be aware how much stormwater trees can store. So really quickly, this is just a comparison of both properties between 2015 and 2023. Try to get it framed in a little bit better. So you can see 11 Wharf Lane there. 2 Braintree is the one that's beneath it. You see a decent-sized tree here, a big tree here, gone. You see what are likely trees or very large bushes all throughout here and over here. Most of those appear to be gone. Over here, these trees gone. And again, some of this predates the current owner of 11 Wharf, but the purpose of it is the same. All of those trees are no longer sucking up stormwater through their roots. So I sort of suggested, you may want to start planting some trees, but you're not likely to get the same results for about 50 years or so until it becomes mature and can actually uptake water. So I immediately was reached out to by the owners of 2 Braintree saying that this tree on the road, the town told them they had to cut it down because of some issue with school buses, and that while the arborist was there, he said this tree was dying and needed to be removed, and they said that they called town hall and got approval from somebody. She thought it was me. I told her that I didn't think that was the case. Again, I don't have any evidence of anything being permitted, but they said we always would want to do the right thing and all of that, and we want to plant some trees, let us know what we have to do. The owners of 11 Wharf reached out to me recently and said that they talked to Jason about the zoning things, and Jason recommended they talk to us. They want to fix the drainage issues, and I said the same thing, that I was going to discuss with the commission tonight, and that if there was going to be any sort of enforcement about unpermitted work, we'd deal with that separately, but that any modifications to fix the runoff would need to be permitted, and I suggested that they would need to hire an engineer for that rather than just try to do something. So jurisdiction comes out really to the street on 2 Braintree and pretty close on 11 Wharf. It's the majority of the property is within jurisdiction. I can go back now to a different view.
So what other than the trees being cut down, I'm looking at the 1990s image, it doesn't look like any structures have been added or anything.
No, no structures. What we have, I don't know why, all right, here we go. So June 2015, again, this was the same image that you were just looking at. You have this section of trees here. And again, I think the current owners have been there for just a couple years. 2020. So again, we're not talking about anything the current owner did yet. May 2016, up here, trees have been removed. Later in 2016, now you have a driveway there. So looking at here, at the edge of Wharf, here you have trees, now you have a driveway. And this is the coastal bank right here, so it is very close. No evidence of a permit on that.
And which one is your house, your 2?
We're 11.
This is, yeah, the one that we're talking about right now.
Thank you.
Going forward now, this is 2021, so now you have sort of this section of trees over here is gone, as well as the tree that was very large that was right here, and some of the other ones over this way. And now for 2023, you have I believe, gravel parking area over here where the trees were. So no structures.
We removed the original permit. So that is no longer there.
Meaning the one that was like the half circle over there?
Yeah,
Okay.
the one that was closest is gone.
Okay.
That's
So
removed.
that's all I got. I didn't feel in this situation that I should be sending out a notice of violation without talking about this with the commission. We have a lot of situations where one neighbor comes to us and reports something the other neighbor has done, and if it's egregious and recent, we immediately send out a notice of violation. Otherwise, I feel it's more appropriate to bring things to the commission so you can say either, yeah, some of this stuff needs to be fixed, send a notice of violation so we can start the process of fixing it, or that you would want it to be handled a different way. Like I said, regardless, anything that's done that is to fix stormwater issues would need permitting with the Conservation Commission. And I think the commission in any situation would likely want to see a design by an engineer rather than to approve modifications that are not engineered.
You would too.
Excuse me?
You would too. Give
Yeah,
it a
but I'm not here to speak tonight, so.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, I don't think there should be conversation with.
Nope, I'm
Yeah.
not here to speak, I'm just here to listen.
So that's all I got. If you have any questions, ask questions. If not, then just tell me what to do.
I know exactly what it's like for this to happen because the construction next to me left a tremendous amount of runoff into my land, and I'm having trouble, because it's a corporation, for them to come and fix it. They've been notified again. These latest storms actually left a pond on my land, which of course is dried up now, but a lot of soil has been lost and run down the road. So these things do happen, and I'm trying to fix it. And I don't know, I don't have a friendly person on the other end, so we'll see what happens.
I think there's potential for a filing for some sort of an engineering fix to the stormwater issue that includes filing in retro for the gravel parking area against the street, and maybe some sort of mitigation near the coastal bank, even just in a couple conservation posts, let some stuff grow wild, just to increase protection of the resource areas. I don't know, that in my opinion, could suffice in lieu of needing to take any enforcement action.
Right.
But, and again, I think there is an issue. Stormwater is now going untreated directly into the bay, likely taking fertilizers and lawn chemicals and everything else with it. I just think that tree removal is as problematic for the situation as modifications to, it may have been that the property at 11 Wharf Lane was a little spongier and now it's less spongy because maybe fill has been added or things have been done differently, but I do think the bigger issue here is lack of trees.
And we have had tremendous rains too.
As we will likely continue to.
Unusually heavy.
Yeah.
Matt, the gravel driveway that you're discussing, that's for 11 Wharf, and that's replaced the hard surface driveway that was there before?
Not even sure that the
I'm looking at 21
previous
and
driveway
23.
was hard surface. It may have been
Okay.
gravel in itself, I'm not sure. I don't have a reference
I'm just looking
for
at the
that.
21 versus 23 images. For 11 Wharf, I don't see any real significant changes. Can you tell me what I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to 2016, I think
Right, I
and go
see
from
that.
there,
2016
like,
is definitely
it's hard
different.
because there's a lot of vehicles there in the 2021 imagery. And
Yeah, but
I
the
don't know.
trees were taken out sometime
Maybe
between.
Jim's special imagery would be better than mine. And
Trees were taken down between 16 and 21, but not 21 and 23. At 11 Wharf, I can see it, the other address, it looks like the tree right closer to the road has been removed. But from 21 to 23,
But the other change, according to the letter, was a change in how high the land was?
that's for the other address, the Braintree Ave one, right?
no, that was 2 Braintree Ave reporting that 11
Okay.
Wharf had
I
changed.
had it mixed up.
And again, I have no evidence of change in grades. I don't have any engineering behind that. It was just a drive-by and aerial imagery review that showed that there was a gravel driveway that was added
Okay.
in that area that used to be
So it was
trees.
11 Wharf that may have changed the grading.
Correct, yeah.
All right.
Tricky one, I think. Sometimes they're tricky.
one. Well, if that's the case, then that's pretty significant. I think that would warrant some action. Have you done a site visit?
Just a drive-by.
Would a site visit help you determine whether or not grading has been changed at 11 Wharf? No.
Maybe not. It would depend when. If it was done like a month ago, probably, but if it's, if the lawn's established, probably not.
Yeah,
Um,
but that's what's being suggested by the other residents.
Right. Right, it is clear that there was work anyways.
Yeah.
That's the gravel driveway, and then getting the confirmation from the change in the aerial imagery made it apparent that there was a change.
Yeah,
Just not entirely sure the extent of it.
thank you.
So the suggestion for an engineer to check it out and see what can be done.
I don't have
Why
any
don't you-
real suggestion. It's up to the commission. If it's up to the commission how they want to handle things. I think with just saying like, hey, go talk to an engineer, get back to us, there's no timeline, there's no real, if a homeowner decides, you know what, I'd really rather not, then at some point we have to revisit it and then issue, follow the process, basically. Basically we have our process, we keep it mostly the same. I'm just stepping outside the process now because I don't want to be always responsible for being the one who issues a notice of violation, because sometimes the commission might go like, come on, for that, in this case, it's clearly within jurisdiction. It was within a yard area, but a yard area that at one point had a lot more vegetation in it. I mean, I can't confirm that those trees were native trees or, in a natural condition or anything like that, but it is clear that there was, a lot of unpermitted work done.
So, just to
basically
clarify,
what
you're asking you're asking us if you should issue a notice of violation?
on one or both properties, yeah.
Thank you.
I was told by the, owners of 2 Braintree that the town made them remove the tree by the road, the smaller one, and that while the arborist was there, he recommended the big one be removed because it was dead or dying, and that somebody else at the town told him it was okay. But, I mean, we have our process. If you're within jurisdiction, you want to cut a tree down for any reason, even if it's already dead, it needs something. It at least needs an admin review, and that process is very easy. So, yeah.
So it seems to me that by your going out there, you could begin to assess what needs to happen, whether eventually it would be a permit after the fact, replanting, mitigation, engineering. But again, especially because of present conditions, storms and all of that, and continued runoff and flooding and whatever all these letters are talking about, we need to make a move. And it seems that at least you should get out there and assess it on the ground. And then, in the meantime, the owners can be considering what engineering needs to happen and what mitigation needs to be happening based on this conversation here.
Sure.
It does seem to me that unpermitted modifications have been made in recent years, and that a notice should be issued. And that would just start the process.
Yeah. I have no, I don't know, there's a lot of ways you could go about this. I think a notice of violation is fine, and it prompts action. Notice of violation basically would invite one or both property owners to likely our next conservation meeting, or maybe the first one in May, to discuss unpermitted work and discuss a way forward, and that allows the commission to either issue enforcement orders or just set timelines on what they want. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely been unpermitted work on both properties. A little, I think, more substantial on one property than the other, but again, some of that unpermitted work was the previous owner, which we've learned doesn't matter in a real meaningful way, but I think, as always, the commission just wants the end result to be permits for what need permits and protection of the resource areas. So I think that we can definitely get that here, just not as good as the trees were doing.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Well, I agree
Do you need a
that
motion?
absent a notice of violation, there's no jurisdiction to proceed, so we can either say thank you for coming, good night, or issue a notice and say come back and see how we fix this.
Well, I was thinking that if Matt goes out there, it would be a more clear approach to issuing a violation once
Clear look.
he's a little bit closer to it.
I can keep it vague,
Okay,
unpermitted modifications.
okay, there you go.
At least that gets
Sure.
the landowner here for a real discussion where we can actually ask questions
Bang
instead
up.
of just, being in the crowd and trying to not talk to them and stay within the open meeting law type flow. Now, my question would be, are we only doing that with 11 Wharf Lane, or are we also issuing the notice to Braintree for unpermitted tree removal?
Both.
Yeah, I think both, yeah. Do you need a motion for this?
I don't think so.
Might as well make
Good.
it official.
You could.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to issue a,
Gotta make it in the game, Brian.
Notice of violation for 11 Wharf
You were gonna
Lane
say-
and 2 Braintree
I think I
Avenue.
already said it, yeah.
was it notice of violation? I thought you said something else.
Nope, notice of violation.
All right,
That's
have a
easy.
motion?
Brian, do you want to make that? or
Sure,
what?
that was my suggestion, so I will take the hit on that and make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right.
Is that motion clear enough for Juliana?
Yes.
Then we have
Thank you, Juliana.
a motion to issue a notice of violation to both properties, to Braintree Ave and 11 Wharf Lane. It's been seconded. To vote on it, Dot?
Yes?
Jim?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Kalina's a yes. Buzz?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
A motion carries. Okay, thanks. You'll be hearing from us.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for.
Be in touch.
your invitation.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Might want to move back just one spec to the meeting minutes for, is it only,
February 28th?
we
I think
haven't
we had to
approved
redo this
any
one
meetings?
because
You had no quorum
we had
last
no
time.
quorum. Yeah, so Brian doesn't vote on this
I
'cause he
don't, Brian
wasn't
and I
a
don't
member.
vote. 'cause we
Yeah,
weren't.
you were recent too, so everybody else can vote, right?
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes for February 28th, 2024?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All
Second.
right. We'll have a vote on that, Dot?
Yes?
Jim?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Kalina? Yes. Buzz?
Yes.
Marilyn? Were you
I would
not there?
abstain.
Okay. All right, that motion so carries. Thank you very much. That's done. There are no other updates, and so.
One quick update.
Or, it says no updates, I'm sorry. All right, one quick update.
Really quick, Eagle Scout Matthew Quinn and his fellow Troop 49 members and parents finished up the Chimney Swift Tower at the Opachinski Fields. And I threw up a temporary sign just telling people what it is and not to poke it and all that. So if you get a chance, when you go into Opachinski and you go to drive around the first field where the house is, there's that little wildflower meadow with a fence in front of it, and you'll see a big tower.
What's this,
So,
true?
Looks great. Looks,
49?
say again?
What's true?
49.
49.
Yeah.
So now build it and they will come.
I hope so. It's certainly there in time because the Chimney Swifts aren't back yet, so fingers crossed.
Okay, well, that's great. That's great. to hear. All right. We're going to move on to closing remarks unless there's some objection.
I have a question.
Oh, there you go, Dot.
Sometimes conversations come up at the senior center about walking, where to walk. And I walked all over this area. I've never done a Kingston walk, to tell you the truth. Which, if any, of the conservation properties that we have would be the easiest for a senior to walk on?
I would say that the first loop at Blackwater Memorial Forest is possible. There are some puddles and some stuff, I don't know, it's
Is it
not,
blazed?
it's,
Megan?
you just keep the cranberry bog to your right.
And what was it, which one?
Blackwater Memorial Forest on
Oh.
Winthrop Street. Ultimately, what we're hoping, this is the one where we're doing the big restoration project of the wetlands, and what we hope when we finish with that is that that loop around the bog will be ADA compliant. For now, it's not, but it is an old bog road, so in that area, I think it's okay enough.
Okay.
But what
There's
about the Cranberry watershed?
Cranberry Watershed
That's pretty good.
has some wide, flat bog roads too. The access into it in places can be a little
In Silver Lake?
If
tricky.
you park behind Silver Lake, it's easy to
Mhm.
get into.
Yeah, yeah. Again, we don't have those trails blazed yet either. That's upcoming,
much
but
parking.
as long as you're not prone to like getting lost and you're in a big group, that could be okay too. Carter Preserve, I think, has, again, old bog roads. It's probably, there's a lot of roots exposed.
That's tough.
That could be tough in
Yeah, yeah,
That's what I
places.
was
Yeah.
thinking, Cranberry watershed, and there are maps online, are there not?
For some of them.
Well, for Cranberry watershed, there's always been.
It's not great.
I wouldn't trust it. We're-
Silver Lake Sanctuary.
Silver Lake Sanctuary is pretty good. If you go to the parking area and you go around the old Iron Gate, that
Right,
trail
the
will
pond
take
and
you
back.
out to the pond, to Silver Lake and back, and I think is relatively flat and easy.
Okay.
Trying to think if there's anything else, but again, it is stuff that we're working on. We're trying to
Okay.
expand that sort of stuff, but for
Yeah.
now, it's a little.
That's a good project. That would be a good project to.
It would be good, be a good Boy Scout project to
Usually happens.
work on trails to make them ADA compliant
I
or
love you guys,
at least
bye.
easier, flatter.
No leaving before I make my closing remarks.
Look at, I'm hanging on every word.
The next meeting will be April 24th, 2024, starting at 6:30 PM. Time's now 8 to 24. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I was scared there for a minute. Okay, Dot,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Kalina's a yes, Buzz,
Yes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you so much.